Welcome to the Red and Bold Show. We are excited to talk 49ers football. We're excited to talk about roster changes, depth charts, all of that good stuff. The initial 53 has been released. Maybe not completely official yet, but the 49ers are still working on that. So we at least have a really, really good idea of who's on the team and who's not on the team anymore. I am one of your hosts, Marc Adams. You can find me at 49ers Camelot, wherever you watch or listen. And I'm joined by Anthony Robertson. You can find him at 49ers Cutback, wherever you watch or listen. We're thrilled to have you. Ant, how's it going, my friend?
It's going good. I think yesterday the initial shock of some of the players and surprises has kind of leveled out now. We have more understanding of what the 49ers were trying to do or what they're currently doing. And we've already seen some of the roster gymnastics. That's what I call it. And I seen it posted today on Twitter. They're calling it roster gymnastics coming to fruition as they're bringing players back, moving other players to the IR. So, yeah, it's been an exciting time. I think there has been revelations about this about this roster that has shaken things. And all the while, everyone's wondering if Brandon Ayuk is actually going to practice today or what's going on with that as well.
Yeah, that was the rumor. We'll see if that actually happens. If anybody in the chat sees that, let us know if you see something that hasn't been announced or rumored yet, and we will get to it. I feel like I'm having internet problems, but we'll get through this. So let's jump in. I want to first talk about who surprised you as far as who made the team and who didn't make the team, those kinds of things. And let's start with cornerback Rock Ya-Sin. That was a little bit of a surprise. Were you surprised by this? They kept Ambry Thomas. Now, he may go on injured reserve. We may find that out today. But I was a little surprised that Ambry Thomas is still on the team. But again, that may be some of the roster gymnastics that you were talking about. But what did you think about Rock Ya-Sin not making the squad?
I was a little surprised. I think you said it right. Kind of over the last 2 days before the 53, initial 53 came out, I started getting an idea that maybe they were going to plan on keeping Ambry Thomas to get him to their IR, just in case. If they get an influx of injuries during the season, they've got Ambry Thomas to be able to bring back. So I understood that method. I thought that they didn't want to lose Clea Davis or John Feliciano or Ambry Thomas, but you don't want to put Ambry Thomas in a situation where he has to come back, where that has to be one of your 8 spots coming back. So you needed to carry him the old-fashioned way to your roster and then to the IR. I think that's what they did. I don't know if Rock Ya-Sin's coming back. I would have loved to have had Rock Ya-Sin on this San Francisco 49ers roster. Now, he is ultimately just depth. When you look at the guys that they have, Charvarius Ward, Deommodore Lenoir, Isaac Yedem, those are your starters, especially in the nickel package. Then you have Renardo Green, who had a really good preseason, and you have Darrell Luter Jr., who's got work to do. I think Darrell Luter Jr. improved from last season, but there's still a lot of things that need to happen with him. So Ambry Thomas is one of those guys you put on the back shelf, and if you need to go ahead and bring him, it's one of those things, right? In case of emergency, break the glass, and you bring out Ambry Thomas, and I think that's what they'll do. So they held on to a piece, but at the expense of Rock Ya-Sin. And I haven't seen that he's landed anywhere right now. I don't know what's going on. The 49ers are still filling out their practice squad. Will Rock Ya-Sin end up on the practice squad? Could he end up back on the roster? I don't know. But that one was probably, a surprise. I thought early on in training camp that wouldn't have been a surprise, but how consistent he's been through training camp in the preseason and made it a real surprise.
Yeah, Lou said, guys, keeping Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles and Ambry Thomas on the 53 at the expense of Jalen Graham, and especially Kingston, was dumb. Yeah, I hated – I mean, the two that he mentioned the 49ers keeping are two that I've been wanting them to move on from. And so it's like I can't get rid of Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles or Ambry Thomas. But what about Jalen Graham? Were you surprised by that one? And Jarrett Kingston, what did you think of those two not making it?
Yeah, when I put together my initial 53-man roster projection, I had both of those guys making the team, and I did go ahead and move on from Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, feeling like Curtis Robinson had outplayed him, even though I knowingly said I expected DFF to somehow get back on this roster and potentially start in week 1. That's just where I thought, but I didn't think he was going to make the initial 53. And I was trying to find a way. I've been trying to find a way for weeks to get Jarrett Kingston on the roster, and I thought putting Feliciano on the predetermined to return list would have helped as far as IR. But I think the 49ers don't want to have to bring back Feliciano if they don't want to. Just in case, if your young players on the interior are playing well, you might not have to bring Feliciano back. And I think they didn't want one of those roster spots taken, because they're always going to have one taken by Drake Greenlaw. He's going to come off the PUP list, and that's going to be one of those activations, and you only get 8. And we remember that in 2021, they ran out of spots. They could not bring back Hassan Ridgeway for the playoffs. So they're trying to be real good with how they handle these, but now you run the risk of losing players. I will say that Jared Kingston now gets the opportunity to go play for the Carolina Panthers, and I'm stoked for him. I think he had a good preseason. I think he was good in pass blocking. I think he needs a lot of work when it comes to run blocking. He was definitely a player that needed to be developed at least for a full season. So I think Jared Kingston could have helped the 49ers in 2025, 2026, and beyond. But the 49ers are also in a win-now situation. You can't wait for a young player to be ready. So it's one of those pick your poisons. Do we put out a player that's better right now that can help us, or do we wait on a young player that could potentially be better? And I think with their method on how they go with offensive linemen, they believe in the draft. They can get another Jared Kingston next year and plug and play him and have him available. So right now, I just think that's their method. Right, wrong, indifferent, I don't know. But that's how they're going about building their team. It was not fun to see Jared Kingston go somewhere else. Would love to see him on the practice squad. But that's how it works sometimes when you have a championship caliber roster.
Yeah, that one hurt. I saw that Josh said, I'm slightly aggravated we lost out on Jarrett Kingston, but we kept Ronnie Bell. Sounds like Josh wanted to keep Ronnie Bell, since he used the word but. I am on the other side of that. They waived Danny Gray and kept Ronnie Bell. You predicted a couple of weeks ago that they would keep Danny Gray. I wasn't sure, but I was hoping that they would keep Danny Gray, because we know what we have with Ronnie Bell. But Danny Gray, if he can develop and stay healthy, he has the potential to be really, really good. And so Josh said, no, I want Bell cut. So, all right, we're on the same page then. Now, what did you think about them keeping Ronnie Bell over Danny Gray? And is there a chance that they're not really going to keep Ronnie Bell, that they're just, because they kept 7 wide receivers, which they have not done. I don't remember them ever doing that. Is there a chance that maybe they kept 7, not knowing what's going to happen with Ayuk? And if Ayuk does practice today and is going to play this season like we expect him to, maybe they trade Danny Gray or Ronnie Bell, or maybe they move on from him in a different way. What do you think's happening there?
Yeah, I think there's eventually going to be a roster move there. You know, the reports are that Terrence Marshall is signing with the 49ers. I've seen mixed reports, some saying that he's going to be on the active 53, some saying he's going to be on the practice squad. Either way, I think it now makes it possible that the 49ers move on from Ronnie Bell, but I do think it was insulation, because they've had Jawan Jennings dealing with an oblique. They have Ricky Pearsall, who's in the practice blue jersey, and so they've been worried about that. Now, when it came to Danny Gray, unfortunately, and this is what happened last week before the preseason game, Danny Gray got hurt. And so Danny Gray didn't play in the game. And the 49ers can't have another injured player on their roster if you're already dealing with injuries to Pearsall and Jawan Jennings. So Ronnie Bell is a guy that's consistently healthy. I think we could say that. He blocks his butt off. I mean, that's something he does at a high level. Mm-hmm. I think you're losing a lot when it comes to everything else. You know, I don't think that he's really dynamic. He can't beat one-on-one coverage. He's not great at contested catches. And so that one was definitely surprising. I don't think you needed to have a 7th wide receiver. We'll see. It looks like the Raiders tried to do something similar with Byron Young, their defensive tackle. They waited for all the claims to come in and then waived him then. Maybe that's what the 49ers plan to do with Ronnie Bell. Or like you said, maybe there's a trade partner out there. Maybe the Chargers and his former coach, Jim Harbaugh, are looking to add Ronnie Bell to their roster. All those things are still possible. I think that there's going to be another move, though. The 49ers cannot carry 7 wide receivers into the season. I just don't think that's likely. They run more tight ends, they run wide receivers out there on the field. So it just doesn't make sense unless Ricky Pearsall is going to IR, which I don't expect either.
Yeah, at first I wondered, are they keeping Ronnie Bell because they don't entirely know what they have with Jacob Cowing, especially in returning punts? But then we see today that Trent Taylor is on the practice squad. So that to me, that doesn't make sense with the Ronnie Bell punt return kind of way of thinking. But we'll have to see how that shakes out. Maybe the biggest surprise. The biggest surprise I'll get to in a minute. But one of the bigger surprises is that they waived Cameron Latu and Braden Willis. That really surprised me. And at first it was very surprising because it was they also let Eric Saubert. They released him, but now they're bringing him back. And by all accounts, it sounds like he's going to be tight end too. So there probably was some kind of agreement. Because the difference is if a player's released, that's a player that has accrued enough seasons that when they're released, they automatically become a free agent so they can sign wherever they want. When a player is waived, that's a younger player that hasn't accrued enough seasons. So they're not able to go into basically free agency mode. They go through waivers and they end up on the team that selects them, so to speak. And so the way that I try to think of it is if they release a player, they're releasing that player from the contract. And so they're releasing that player to go, join another team. So what is interesting is that I think that maybe, I don't know this, I haven't heard this, but I'm just wondering if they had some kind of agreement with Eric Saubert that we're going to release you, but we want you to be tight end too, so don't go anywhere else. Come here. I don't know if they would do that or not. It seems a little risky because it could make him mad and he could go sign somewhere else, but maybe that's what happened. But what did you think about that tight end situation?
I think it was surprising, because you heard the young guys were getting waived. And once you heard the young guys were getting waived, it was the expectation that Saubert was going to make this team, and maybe even Logan Thomas was going to make this team, and that they were going to go with some of the veterans. And then you find out that those guys are gone too. So when I saw that it was 2 tight ends, then I knew for sure that they were taking advantage of a vested veteran, moving them and then, bringing them back. They did it with Tyler Kroft. They did it with Ross Dwelley. They used to do it with Kerry Hyder. It's a way for them to go ahead and let these guys go, knowing they're full well they're coming back. They kick them a little bit extra money on their next contract, and then they move other players to IR and create space. So that part didn't shock me. Now, Braden Willis is back on the 49ers practice squad, so they didn't release him. The move worked. Cameron Latu chose to go sign with the Cleveland Browns practice squad. That's where he's going to be. So 49ers, get one of their young tight ends back, and they still have a young player in Jake Tunges, who they kept on the roster, and they get their blocking tight end in Eric Saubert. So overall, I think their method worked, and that's one of the things they do with vested veterans. That's why I wait to hear what happens with Rock Yassin. I haven't heard anything yet. So that's one of the things that I'm waiting for. And just a little note here, I saw on Twitter that Kyle Shanahan said he hopes Brandon Ayuk will practice today. So he is hopeful that Brandon Ayuk's going to practice, and he's optimistic that they're going to get things done with Trent. He said when 2 sides want to get a deal done, it usually happens. Those just came out of the Kyle Shanahan press conference that is going on, or was going on right now.
Well, Jim Everett the Great doesn't agree. He says BA bye, Trent Williams bye. But he's a Rams fan, so what does he know about football? Jennifer Lee Chan is reporting that Kyle Shanahan obviously said the what you just mentioned about Ayuk. That she also said that Aaron Banks will be back on Tuesday after breaking his pinky finger, so he's going to be good to go for week 1. Also, Isaac Guerrero tweaked his groin on Monday, and they hope to have him back next week. Do not like hearing that. That stinks. Hopefully, he comes back next week and is ready to go. It was his hamstring that he was dealing with before.
Right.
Yeah. So we obviously have heard that Talanoa Hufanga has been activated from the PUP list. So that's good news. Who knows if he's going to play week 1 or not? They may. I don't know what they're going to do with him, but I don't think that they're going to rush him back, nor should they. I don't like the idea of them starting playing against Aaron Rodgers without Hufanga, but they might have to for the sake of the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they brought Tracy Walker back to the practice squad. And that's kind of what I thought, that Tracy Walker was going to get elevated off the practice squad. I think that's the most likely if Hufanga is not ready to go. But the 49ers, I mean, this is kind of what they've had to do at safety before. It was just a couple years ago that Tashawn Gibson was on the 49ers practice squad and stepped in week 1 and played for the San Francisco 49ers. And Tracy Walker's a veteran. I mean, he's been in this league for a long time. We don't expect him to get a lot of playing time. George Odom would handle that role. But Tracy Walker's also a good special teams player. So 49ers are doing what they can to insulate themselves and give Talanoa Hufanga enough time to come back. And Hufanga's got to work his way in the same way that, they're saying other players are going to start working in. Aaron Banks is supposed to practice next week, which, I'm glad you said that because that's good news for the 49ers. And then just a little update on Elijah Mitchell. He's actually having surgery on the hamstring. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
That's crazy to hear that he's having season-ending surgery. So that's why he got put on season-ending IR. That hamstring must have been really bad. So that kind of clears up some of the confusion about why Elijah Mitchell wasn't determined to come back. And a lot of it has to do with the fact the injury is just so bad he can't come back.
Yeah, and that was one of my other big surprises. Elijah Mitchell going on season-ending IR. They put Kalia Davis on IR as well, but he's designated to return. With Mitchell, he's scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent. So it's possible we've seen the last of Elijah Mitchell in San Francisco, unless they work out some kind of deal. But I don't know that they're going to. He's often injured. And hopefully Isaac Guerendo's not following in those footsteps. But that I think that Elijah Mitchell has been really good for the 49ers when he's been healthy. It's just that it hasn't happened that often.
Yeah, he hasn't been able to stay healthy since he's been with the 49ers. I mean, he was only able to play 11 games his rookie season. And then after that, he hasn't even reached double digits. It's just been really tough for him. And so, this is a situation where the 49ers like the player. When he's out there, he's tremendous upside. But he's definitely not in the plans for the 49ers in 2024. We'll see what happens, beyond that. I think they were preparing for him to move on anyways with Isaac Guerrero. So I hope the groin is nothing serious, that he'll be ready to go next week. And potentially the 49ers could use him. But there's a likelihood that Guerrero is going to be inactive. I know we all looked at him as the potential kick returner, but with so many other players that the 49ers want to have active for game day, Guerendo's still not a guarantee to be active. They kept Patrick Taylor. He's a really good special teams player. So it looks like the 49ers are going to roll with this running back group. I think it's a good running back group. I would have loved to have seen Elijah Mitchell instead of Patrick Taylor, but it's still good. Jordan Mason has been fantastic throughout the preseason. And hey, we still have that Christian McCaffrey guy, and I think he's pretty good too.
Yeah, he barely made the team, though, so you never know. Matt Mayoko just tweeted, in addition to Eric Saubert, others who appear in line to return to the 49ers for spots on the 53-man roster are Ben Barch and Rock Ya-Sin. So you may get your wish there. That would be great if they could bring him back, because I think that he had a really good training camp. Looked good in the preseason as well.
Yeah, Rock Ya-Sin is solid. And I think that he adds the depth on the outside that they're looking for, because now you have Renardo Green that has the versatility to go inside and outside, but then you have Isaac Yedem and Rock Ya-Sin. And a lot of people forget Rock Yassin last year had 0 missed tackles. This guy was a phenomenal tackler. I know he missed a couple here in the preseason, but his coverage was great. He was physical. And adding these key veterans is huge. And they've had problems down the stretch when it comes to playoffs and it comes to Super Bowl with depth. They're playing guys that really aren't supposed to be out there playing. And now they've made it fresh. And I like Darrell Luter Jr. practicing around Rock Yassin because to me, I think that is a good comp for Darrell Luter Jr., a very physical corner, long. He could emulate Rock Yassin and get a lot better. And maybe next year, Darrell Luter Jr. is our Rock Yassin. So I kind of like that move for the 49ers. I think he is a prototypical type of corner that they would love to have on the roster. And I like bringing those guys back. The Ben Barch one, I got to admit, that's a little surprising because of the depth on the inside. It must mean they think Barch or somebody can play tackle because that's one of the concerns. You're bringing Ben Barch on the active 53-man roster. What does that mean for the other parties and the other bodies that are on the inside?
Yeah, especially without Trent Williams right now. I mean, 2 tackles on the team is scary. Let's see. Let me get to a couple of questions. Freddie Mac asked, did I miss a conversation about DFF over Graham? Yeah, we did talk about that a little bit. We aren't crazy about that move. A little surprised about Graham, but when it comes to those young, I'm not super surprised that D Winters made it over Graham. In fact, I'm not surprised about that at all. But the fact that who's the
Tatum
young
Bethune.
one? Bethune. I was a little surprised that he made it over Graham, but he played really well in the preseason game. So in some ways, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I think with Tatum Bethune, the thing about him is he flashed so much in the run game as far as being able to be a good tackler. And I mean, the instincts were through the roof. And I think that they looked at that and they said, you know what, Jalen Graham's not great at coverage, and Tatum Bethune's really not good at coverage, but Tatum Bethune is way better when it comes to recognizing the run and getting downhill and making tackles. And so they saw a lot more upside with Bethune. But we're talking about 2 7th-round picks, right? Jalen Graham last year, 7th-round pick. This time, Tatum Bethune, and they just thought the one this year had a little bit more ability. And then Jalen Graham, he makes a smart decision for him. He goes to Washington. Adam Peters there. He knows him very well. Opportunity to play. I think that was smart for him because I don't think there's an avenue to get on a 49ers linebacker room that is so talented. And I think Tatum Bethune's the next one. And let's see what he does. The way he flashes in the run game, if he can figure out how to play good coverage, he could be a big-time linebacker for the 49ers. He could be that next Azeez Al-Shire type guy. It's a tall order. He's got a lot to learn, but that's the kind of flashes he showed.
So Lou said, or asked, Kyle said, BA maybe Wednesday on 5th year. I think he's saying that Kyle said that Ayuk might practice today, and maybe he's asking if he's going to be, does this mean he's going to play on the 5th year? I think it could mean that, or it could mean that he's just hopeful that that they can get a deal worked out.
Yeah, Kyle basically insinuated that, if Brandon's out there, it's no indication that they're any closer on getting a contract extension done. It just means he's out there and practicing, and they're going to start working him in. Individual drills, getting his body right, but no team drills right now. So I think that's the buildup, is they're trying to get him reacclimated to the 49ers offense and trying to get his body ready to be able to go week 1. And so I think that's what Kyle Shanahan is referring to. So it's not that it's going to be the 5th year for sure, but a contract extension doesn't mean that's imminent either.
Eric asks, have the 49ers signed any players that were cut by other teams? The only one that I've seen is Terrence Marshall Jr., the wide receiver. You mentioned him. You said that you've seen that he was added to the active roster or to the 53 and to you've also seen practice squad. I've only seen practice squad. So that would be my guess, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so 15 is what I have on the practice squad, plus Isaac Alarcon, who is an international player. So he doesn't count toward the 16. So if Marshall is on the practice squad, then that means that they still could add one more, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, they still have room, and I'm sure they're still negotiating, or talking to other players. And there's still players out there. You know what I mean? There's guys from other teams that are still available, and players are trying to figure out what's their next step. And do I go to a team and be on their practice squad? Do I go on a 53-man roster? What's the best situation for me to get on the field? And that's what players are trying to determine, and that's what the 49ers are trying to negotiate. And so I think that's something that's interesting. And for all the people that have been wondering when the rubber was going to meet the road on Brandon Ayuk, he's now been cleared by doctors from his back and neck issues. He can now incur fines for missing practice and missing games. So it's here now. This is the time. That's why he might be at practice today. If not, he's going to get fined. So that has finally come down, and the 49ers can now move forward. And now the pressure's on Brandon Ayuk because now money talks. And I think we always wanted to get to this point, and now we're there.
So the Car God said 49er veteran here, 45 plus years. That's amazing. There's movement that started this morning for the faithful to rise up and call for Kyle the false prophet's firing. I don't think Kyle Shanahan's going anywhere. I've never heard him called a false prophet either. Like he's a really good coach. I mean, probably the best play designer and play caller in the league. Is he perfect as a head coach? No, but I mean, there aren't very many who are. So I'm certainly not on that bandwagon calling for Kyle Shanahan to be fired. I think that's a terrible idea. I still remember Dennis Erickson and Jim Tomsula.
Yeah, and the thing is what is your goal as an NFL team? It's to be involved in potentially winning a championship every single year, year in and year out. You don't replace those front office or coaching staffs when they're year in and year out competing. You just don't. That's not the best way to go about business. And Kyle Shanahan, like you said, one of the best play callers in the league. He continually finds good coaches to surround him, even after he loses coaches after coaches. And even though the roster has changed from 2019 and 2021, they were still competing in NFC Championship games and the Super Bowl. It goes to show that they can build a roster, they can develop talent, and they play really well. Have they completed their ultimate goal? No. But in the grand scheme of things in the NFL, that is the main thing, to stay vigilant and making sure that you can continue to compete and win. And Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers do that at a high level. I don't think Kyle Shanahan's going anywhere. I don't think Jed York wants to see another regime that doesn't include John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan anytime soon.
Key said if Trent and Ayuk ain't practicing yet, it's time to start preparing for the worst. Next man up. Let's go Niners. Lou asks, which roster moves do you see when Trent returns?
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do there. You know what I mean? I don't know what decision they make. They've probably, I mean, right now they're still carrying Ronnie Bell. So, I mean, we'll see what happens if they do in fact bring back Rock Yassin and bring back some of those other guys. They're going to have to make roster cuts like that. Haven't heard official words on John Feliciano or Ambry Thomas. I expect those to come down as well. And they've just got to kind of free up some space. And so we'll see what happens and what moves they ultimately make. But I don't know. But they're going to have to clear it up at some point. It could be as simple as you just added Ben Barch to the roster. Maybe Ben Barch is gone once Trent Williams comes back. It could be something as simple as that.
Let's see. Do I have any other ones? Papa J said, since McKivitz is originally a right guard, should the 49ers switch him with Pooney, considering that Pooney is faster and has played that position before also? I know that Kyle said that they didn't draft Pooney with tackle in mind, but they did like that he could play multiple positions on the offensive line. But I think that the injury to Feliciano and Burford kept them from experimenting with him in training camp. So I would not expect them to do anything with Pooney anytime soon.
Yeah, I think they like where Pooney is. Kyle Shanahan mentioned he can't see a scenario where Pooney's not starting. And so I think Pooney's the starting right guard. And, and I know Colton McKivitz has definitely not impressed. That is for sure. He hasn't lived up to the billing as a starting right tackle. But I think the 49ers want to see what happens when they get in the year. I will say this about Colton McKivitz. He's run blocking better than I think I've seen him run block in the past. So that's at least an upgrade from what we've seen from him. Maybe he'll settle down. When you start adding in a lot of your other offensive elements and you start running the football consistently, you take some of the pressure off of that offensive line. And so maybe that will help Colton McKivitz a little bit. I will say that down the stretch last year, Colton McKivitz got better when it came to pass blocking compared to early on in the season where he was getting cooked by guys like TJ Watt. But yeah, there still needs to be growth there. But I think they like Dominic Pooney at right guard. And I think when you're talking about a young player, if he was in year 2, year 3, I think that would be more of an avenue the 49ers could look at. But in year 1, you just want him to feel comfortable. One position, get him a lot of work, and then hopefully develop him into a offensive guard of the future, because decisions are coming next year on Aaron Banks. And right guard was a problem for the 49ers last year.
Do you have your list of 49ers practice squatters? Not squatters, but squad players.
I can look it up though.
Okay. Or I can read them off, and I just want you to tell me who you're the most excited about.
Okay.
So the offensive lineman, Alex Alarcon, defensive line, Evan Anderson, defensive lineman, Alex Barrett, defensive line, Jonathan Garvin, offensive line, Sebastian Gutierrez, cornerback, Chase Lucas, safety, Jalen Mahoney. Heard John Chapman is really high on him. Wide receiver, Tay Martin, defensive line, T.Y. McGill, quarterback, Tanner Mordecai, offensive line, Drake Nugent, tight end, Mason Pline, wide receiver, Trent Taylor, safety, Tracy Walker III, tight end, Braden Willis, and wide receiver, Terrence Marshall Jr. Any of those get you excited that they brought them back?
I think there's 2 guys that stood out. Jalen Mahoney is one of them. I thought Jalen Mahoney did really good during the preseason. I like him a lot in the box, helping in the run game, being able to attack around the line of scrimmage. I think that's an area where he's really good. His instincts are good when it comes to getting downhill and making tackles in the run game. He's a good tackler as well. I think I would like to see him get better in coverage, but I do think he's a guy that could develop. And this is a guy we could talk about as potential depth for the 49ers next year. So I like Jalen Mahoney. I think he was better than I thought he looked in college during the preseason and during training camp, which is good news. So that one definitely stands out on defense. And then I think Terrence Marshall, bringing in a guy that's got the ability that he has, a size. Everyone saw what he did in college. He was a really good player. So you got somebody with some tremendous upside that potentially the 49ers could use to help this football team. So one on offense and one on defense that I'm really excited about. And I think that those guys, I want to see what they do during the season and how they develop. But both of them could eventually help this team. Maybe not this year, but next year. Terrence Marshall might have an opportunity to help this year if there's injuries. So I think those guys are the ones that really get my attention.
Let's see. Saw a question in here that I lost it. All right, I'll find it here in a minute. So that's what the 49ers have done on. Here's the question. Lou asked, do you see Pooney moving to left guard and Burford right guard next year?
I think that's possible. I think that the only reason I think that's possible is I saw it with Aaron Banks. They worked Aaron Banks at guard, right guard, his entire rookie season. And then the next year they moved him over to left guard and he played in place of Laken Tomlinson. And I think that's what you got here. An incumbent is going to be hitting free agency, and Dominic Pooney could easily move to left guard, play next to Trent Williams for the next couple of years. That would be a solid left side. Spencer Burford steps in at right guard. Yeah, I think that's possible. They've never really flirted with the idea of Burford playing left guard. And so I think that makes the most sense for the 49ers. Of course, I expect them to continue to add to this roster and draft some guys to compete with Burford next year, because Burford will be in the last year next year. But yeah, I do think that's supposed to be the interior battery for the 49ers. I won't even be shocked if next year Nick Sakel is the starting center over Jake Brendel. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
All right, let's get into the depth chart real quick. Next week, we're going to talk the fun stuff 49ers versus Jets, Monday Night Football. We'll break down that game and tell you what to expect and what we're hoping to see. But let's get into the depth chart here. So let's start on the offense. At quarterback, we have Brock Purdy, Josh Dobbs, and then Brandon Allen. Any idea who's going to be quarterback 2, and does it really even matter?
I don't think it matters right now, especially. I think that you're just going to let these guys go out there and work, and Kyle Shanahan will decide at game day, and it could change week to week by the matchups potentially, right? If he wants somebody that's more athletic as his backup quarterback, then he can have Dobbs available and Brandon Allen's that inactive emergency quarterback. Or if maybe he wants somebody that can win from the pocket, that's the best situation. Now it's Brandon Allen and Dobbs is the emergency guy. So he can play with this however he wants. He doesn't have to name a quarterback 2. Of course, it makes it tougher when you're getting reps at practice, but he could alternate it. So I don't know. I would probably lean towards Josh Dobbs because he has the ability to extend plays and make some of those dynamic plays that could possibly help you win a game. But that doesn't mean that's what it is. I just think that's what I've seen in preseason and where I would kind of lean. But that's how I think he could handle it. He could go either way.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think that Brandon Allen is more of the type of quarterback that Kyle likes. But what Dobbs can do in a game with his legs, I think is going to be hard to ignore if he does have to play. Let's go wide receiver. So we have Brandon Ayuk if he indeed shows up. Deebo Samuel, Jawan Jennings, Chris Conley, Ronnie Bell, Ricky Pearsall, Jacob Cowing. If they don't keep 7, who is the odd man out?
I think at this point, I would say it's Ronnie Bell. I think that when we always got to wonder what's happening with Ricky Pearsall. I think Jawan Jennings is going to be back from the oblique. And so that I think it does come down to Pearsall. But you don't need that many guys to be available for the game, that's for sure. So I think once they know that Jawan Jennings is good and Ricky Pearsall is good, Ronnie Bell could potentially be moved, and they'll just kind of move on from him. And you're definitely not having 7 guys active for a game. And we know Jacob Cowing he's going to be handling punt return duties. So he's going to be one of those 4. And then I think the 5th one is probably going to be Chris Conley for the most part because he helps on special teams as well. So I think it's going to be tough, for a guy like Ronnie Bell to even get on the field. That's why it was so shocking when you look and there's 7 wide receivers and Ronnie Bell's one of them. Only thing I can think is insulation, maybe a trade, whatever it is. But I think that one is still to be determined.
Running back, we have Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason, Patrick Taylor Jr., and Isaac Guerrero. Would you say that Patrick Taylor is probably running back number 3 right now?
Yeah, I think Patrick Taylor, he's been in the league. He played in a very similar system with Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. He had a really good preseason last year. This year, no one really got to see him besides training camp. He looked good at camp, and then he got injured. And I think that he's a big physical running back, another 220-pound, 6'2" guy. He can move a load, but he's very good on special teams. So I think he is running back 3. I think Kyle Shanahan will trust him within this offense. But really, I mean, it's going to be Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason's show. When Christian McCaffrey's not out there, it's going to be Jordan Mason. It's going to be clear cut. The only way Guerrero is active for game days if he's handling kickoff return duties, but he's going to have a healthy groin to make that happen.
I think that tight end is a little more clear. We have George Kittle, Eric Saubert, and Jake Tonjes. Anything there? I mean, it's going to go that way, right?
Yeah, 100%. Eric Saubert has been tight end too since the first part of training camp. I mean, he looked really good. He looked the part. I think the avenue that the 49ers were hoping to get a lot better was with receiving tight ends. I don't think they did. They got 2 possession tight ends behind George Kittle. There's nothing dynamic there. That's what they were hoping Cam Latu or Logan Thomas were going to provide, and that's not there. So they went with what they're used to. Solid blockers who can catch the occasional pass. So do I think Saubert's going to have a big season? I wouldn't see it. Do I think he's going to be a better receiving threat than Charlie Warner? Yes, I think he's a little bit better. Think of him as a mix of Ross Dwelly and Charlie Warner together. He'll be good. He'll be nice. He'll make a couple plays for this team, but I don't know how dynamic he's going to be. So I don't think they upgraded the tight end position as much as they thought they were going to since last year's draft.
On the offensive line, it's still a little hard to totally nail down because Trent Williams isn't here yet. Let's assume that he is. He's obviously a starter. Colton McKivitz, Dominic Pooney at right guard, Aaron Banks at left guard, and Jake Brendel at center. But we don't know what's going to happen with Feliciano. Burford is going to be a backup. Zakel's a backup. Jalen Moore. Any other thing that you think might shake out there, or is that pretty well how things are set?
Yeah, one thing that's interesting is Ben Barch. Where does he fit on this 49ers offensive line now that they're potentially bringing him back? Matt Miyoko kind of said that. I've heard others say that as well. I think that you look at Spencer Burford, he's the number one backup for Dominic Pooney, and so he'll play the right guard spot in a need. And then I think when you look at left guard and center, that's going to be Nick Zakel. And so he's going to be that John Feliciano role until John Feliciano is potentially available. Now, Feliciano, I believe, is going to go on the IR. The surgery was supposed to keep him out for 6 to 8 weeks. So my guess is that will be what happens with Feliciano. And so, overall, you got Jalen Moore as a swing tackle. He's doing both. In an emergency situation, you have a bunch of guys that have played tackle throughout their career at some point. Between Ben Barch, he used to be a tackle. Nick Zakel was a tackle. Spencer Burford was a tackle. Dominic Pooney was a tackle. So if in an emergency and you got somebody else go down, you could go that route. So I think that's what they're looking at. But it would definitely hurt the football team to not have a solid backup tackle beyond Jalen Moore. But I think that's what they're going to do.
Let's see. The Car Gods asked, do you guys think Dobbs is starter or backup quarterback material? I think both. I would say he's a backup with the potential to start here and there. But if Brock Purdy goes down early in the season and Dobbs is the quarterback for the rest of the year, I don't think it's going to go well.
Yeah, I think Josh Dobbs is a low-level starter. So maybe for the last 5 teams in the league, he could be a starting quarterback. I think Josh Dobbs is the perfect quarterback to get you through 2 to 3 games, and get you go 2-1 or win you a couple football games. I think he could do that. Operate in the offense, get the ball to his playmakers. I think he could handle that. But to go out there and say that he's going to win 10, 11 games, no, I don't think that's who Josh Dobbs is. I think there is some upside still with him if he could learn to play within the pocket. He's got the physical tools. He's definitely got the mental makeup for it. But so far, I haven't seen anything that would make me think he's anything other than a low-level starter, which makes him a pretty good backup if you just need to win a couple games. And I think that's why the 49ers got him.
Interesting thought here from Eric. Too bad they never made Brock earn his job. I don't know. I think that when you're the last player in the draft taken and you're the 4th stringer who beats out the 3rd stringer, who then replaces the 2nd stringer who replaced the 1st stringer, and you take your team to the playoffs, have your elbow blown up and come in and have an incredible season, I think that you've earned the right to be the guy. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think, Brock Purdy earned it throughout his time in the league. That's the thing. You become an incumbent quarterback, and when you become the incumbent quarterback, you just have to be consistent. And if somebody else wants to take your job, they got to go in there and take your job. Nobody came for his job. Nobody even came close to touching Brock Purdy and what he was doing in training camp. And, now he's the guy. Everyone believes in Brock Purdy. There's no quarterback competition, and there shouldn't be. He's the guy, and he's going to have a big season. And I think that's exactly what the 49ers are hoping for. They're looking for their franchise quarterback, and they got a franchise quarterback in Brock Purdy.
Trying to go through. I hate missing out on legitimate questions here. So let's see. Lou asked, do you lose the other IR player to return because you didn't use it on the initial 53? How many times they can do that? 8 times in a season? that right?
Right. Yeah, you can have 8 guys return during the season. In the playoffs, you get more. You can have guys come, off the you can have more guys come off. I think it's another 2. And then you got also the practice squad spots. You can then elevate unlimited. So those things change. But the destined to return, you had 2 before the initial 53-man roster came out. The 49ers only decided to use 1. Because if you do that, you have to make one of those guys come back. So Kalia Davis is the one. So they still had 7 left. And they know they're going to have to use 1 on Drake Greenlaw. He's going to come off PUP list. And then now you don't have to worry. You have 6. So that way, if somebody else gets hurt, like heaven forbid something happens to Brock Purdy and he's out for 4 games and they put him on IR, they could bring him back. They have to have a spot to do that. So it used to be 10. Now it's 8. And I think the 49ers were just trying to be careful with it. That's why Kalia Davis is the only one. They didn't free up the extra roster spot with Feliciano because they didn't want to make him predetermined to come back in case they didn't want to use that spot on Feliciano. You never know. I mean, if you're getting really good play out of your interior offensive line, they might not need to bring him back. Maybe the young pups outplay him. That would be the best case scenario.
So I guess John Lynch is speaking right now, and he said that he expects Brandon Ayuk to practice today. When asked what if he doesn't practice, Lynch said, then we'll deal with that. So not sure how to take that, but I don't think I'd want John Lynch mad at me. Let's see here. I'm going back to this where Eric was talking about Brock Purdy not having to compete. He said that he wasn't doing anything in training camp. He was recovering from elbow injury. Yes, you're right. But you also have to remember that report right before the Super Bowl where it was, I don't remember who it was that said, it was Jed York who said it, that Brock's rookie year, I think it was in training camp, that Kyle told him Brock's the best quarterback we have or something like that. And so it could just be that they saw something special in him right off the bat. And Eric said, my point is if you put Purdy in a quarterback competition, you would see how he looks compared to another quarterback. Again, I don't disagree with that. But I also think that when you're coming back from a torn UCL, you are in a quarterback competition. Maybe not with another quarterback, but you're in a competition with yourself, trying to come back from an injury like that. And it had to be in the back of his mind. Trey Lance lost his job to injury. Jimmy Garoppolo lost his job to injury. Could I lose my job to injury? So he kind of was in a quarterback competition.
Oh, he 100% was. I was at training camp last year. I got to see Brock Purdy playing with the injured elbow. And you know what? When he wasn't there, Sam Darnold and Trey Lance were getting first-team reps. And so there was a thought process that there could be a competition. Sam Darnold and Trey Lance could have went out there and seized that job. They had the opportunity. They did not. Brock Purdy, and let's be clear, with a injured elbow, because it wasn't 100%, with an injured elbow, outplayed Trey Lance and Sam Darnold last year. If there was a competition, he seized it. And so, yeah, I think that, he hasn't had to have a overall, point blank, these two guys are competing for, quarterback one. But he had to go out there and prove it. And I thought last year he did a really good job. And then just look at what he did during the season. I mean, he did so good. That was one of the greatest seasons that we've had quarterback play in a long time in San Francisco. He broke Jeff Garcia's record for yards in a season. His completion percentage was through the roof. You don't do that if you're not quarterback one. And so, I mean, I get it. There hasn't been a clear-cut competition, but you're right, Mark. There was competition last year between him and Sam Darnold and him and Trey Lance. They got first-team reps with the starters at practice and couldn't seize the day.
Yeah, and I just think that, when they brought on Sam Darnold last year, even though he was kind of this maligned quarterback who was, some calling him a bust, and he probably would be compared a bust since he was drafted in the first round. But I mean, if you're injured and you're trying to come back from an injury and your team signs a former number 3 overall pick, in your mind, I'm competing. And so I don't think that Brock Purdy ever thought that he wasn't. Jerry Rice never competed, but he always thought that he was. He was always worried he was going to get cut, and that's what pushed him and drove him so much. So I think that Brock has some of that.
Yeah, and Eric is right. I mean, Kyle said that Brock Purdy was quarterback one, but make no mistake, if Sam Darnold would have outplayed Brock Purdy last year, Sam Darnold would have been the starting quarterback for the 49ers, because Kyle's responsibility to this team is to put the best possible player out there to win. It doesn't matter who that player is. And Sam Darnold has a bigger arm. He's bigger overall. He's stronger. He's faster. All that is true. But Brock Purdy proved that he was a better quarterback. He ran the offense efficiently, effectively, and makes some of the best layered and timely throws that I've seen a quarterback make. And plus, he just reads defenses different. And it's interesting. I've seen someone put in chat as well. Sam Darnold is a starting quarterback right now for the Minnesota Vikings. So you actually had two starters there that are now out in the league. You got Brock Purdy and then Sam Darnold. So he was in competition. I know he was quarterback one, but there was an opportunity with him missing practice for someone else to take that job, but they couldn't.
Well, and all we have to do is look at the fact that they kept Jake Tonjes and let go Braden Willis and Cam Latu, two drafted players, one of them drafted in the third round. And so I think that shows that this coaching staff, this front office, is they're more about what you do than where you were drafted. So I think that's important. Let me get to a couple of questions before we take off. We're not gonna be able to finish the depth chart, but that's all right. So John asks, as far as the offseason went, do you guys think our defensive line was upgraded?
I do. I did my first half breakdown of the preseason matchup today for defense. Malik Collins was an absolute monster in this game. He looked fantastic. I know he wasn't going against the starters, but he was flashing in every single play he was in, and he was executing at a high level. And then Javon Hargrave is in better shape than he was last season. Self-admittedly, he looked really good in training camp. Leonard Floyd is really good. And then you got Nick Bosa. So I think that they're good, but I think you might have an upgrade as well, and this might catch people off guard. I think they upgraded Jordan Elliott as an upgrade over Javon Kinlaw, because I think Jordan Elliott is a more balanced player. Last year, Javon Kinlaw was good against rushing the passer, struggled against the run. Elliott's a little bit better against the run and can still rush the passer. So I think they got an advantage there. And then Givens is just Givens. I mean, he's basically in the same spot that he was last year. So I think it might be a little upgrade. Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott just slightly above Eric Armstead, who I think was by far better than all these guys. Don't get me wrong. But I think that it's just a little bit better than that and Kinlaw together. And so I do think it's going to end up being better because you added defensive tackle help and you added Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos, which were desperately needed.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they're better than they were last year. Are they as good as the 2019 group? No. But I like where they are. We'll have to see how it works out. But I think that, especially against the run, I think that they made a concerted effort to be better there. And Papa J asks, to keep Christian McCaffrey healthy and fresh, do you think that JP Mason is going to get the ball more this season than all backups for CMC did last year combined?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think Kyle Shanahan kind of spilled the beans on that early on in the offseason when he said that they might make an effort to not allow Christian McCaffrey to have so many carries in the run game. And so I think that's where Jordan Mason comes in. That's his best attribute, is running the football anyways. He showed the vision this year. He's cutting a lot better. I think that Jordan Mason is going to get more carries this year and more touches than he's gotten in his entire career. And I think that they're going to look to manage Christian McCaffrey, especially during the middle of the season, where they're going to want to keep him fresh for the playoffs and the Super Bowl potential. So I think that we're going to see a lot more Jordan Mason carrying the football this year. And I think it's going to look more like a 1-2 punch this season than it looked last year. And that's good news for the 49ers and good news for Jordan Mason. But I'm hoping that we get some of those big carries and that he can kind of play the certain areas where they like the kind of into first quarter to middle of second quarter time. Jordan Mason get a lot more play. McCaffrey for the end of the first half, and then have Jordan Mason play a lot of the third like they did with Elijah Mitchell when they first got McCaffrey, and then put McCaffrey more so in the fourth quarter. he stays fresh, and then you use him in all those areas. But those are when Jordan Mason kind of gets his carries and his touches is kind of in those spans.
Yeah, I would agree with that. McCaffrey doesn't like to come off the field, and Bobby Turner said as much, said that he doesn't like taking McCaffrey off the field, but I think that you're right. They have to spell him more often. So, hey, that's all that we have for today. Make sure that you take a look at this Stream Elements message here and go get you some sweet Cutback Crew merch. The link is in the message here. So the chat thing, whatever you call this thing, where the chat's at, it's in there. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that and go get it. 49erscutbackshop.com. So go there and help Ant out. He would appreciate that. And we appreciate you joining us and for listening and taking part in this chat. For those of you especially in here and being part of this with us, we appreciate it. Everybody have a good rest of your week. Next week, we'll be back at 2:00 Pacific time on Wednesday to break down 49ers and Jets. So until then, everybody have fun, and we'll see you then.